All right, hello everybody. Welcome to Laser Brains, the podcast that reviews every sci-fi and fantasy movie ever made. I'm your co-host, Mike Allen, as always, I'm joined by
Joshua Mervell, and today we're going to be talking about the 1984 film, The Last Starfighter.
That's right, and as always, we're joined by Meteor co-owner, Champion.
Greetings, Starfighters. How are you doing tonight?
We're doing awesome because we just watched The Last Starfighter.
We did. We watched the whole thing, start to finish.
So here's the funny thing. I saw this many times as a kid, then one time as a 20-year-old, then 3 times, I think, with you. I think I watched it at your house, then again, and then here. So Last Starfighter.
We're watching Starfighter again, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Gun to my head. No, but I enjoyed it every time. But Ian, tell me, what is your experience with Last Starfighter before today?
I've watched it a bunch of times. The first time I saw it, I think probably would have been a few years after it came out. From what I recall, I was on a little family trip, and it was on in the hotel when we were trying to sleep.
Cool.
Yeah, and it was just watched it on TV. And I loved it, but this was 1987, maybe. So, like, what do you do as a 10-year-old with the information that you've just seen a really cool movie, and I don't know what it is? I didn't know what it was called, right? Like you jump in 10 minutes in, and you have no idea it's called The Last Starfighter.
Sure.
And then you go home and you're like, I saw a cool movie. I don't know what it was called. And I can't Google it because Google doesn't exist yet.
Doesn't exist back in those days, yeah.
So it's a movie that sort of rattled around in my brain for a decade.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even know what it was called. And it was probably not until I was in my 20s that maybe I saw it again accidentally.
Yeah, and you realize,
and like, oh my god!
Right.
All that I knew was the Death Blossom. That's all I knew.
Okay, see, for me, I went through a phase in my 20s where I've gone through many Star Wars phases, but this was one where I was like, I'm gonna watch every single movie that came out in the wake of Star Wars. So like Enemy Mine, the one with the castle in space, whatever that one was called, I don't know. And then this
Flash
one.
Gordon?
No. Not Flash Gordon. There's one where if you look at the cover, there's a castle, and there's like a guy with like a sword. It's like it has Liam Neeson in it in one scene and Patrick Stewart.
Just
and we were
talking about it last week.
we were talking about this. Yeah, what was it called? I can't remember. It has like one word title.
Yeah,
and it has like U. It has a U in it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Just look up Liam Neeson. And then Last Starfighter. So then I watched this with Ian many a time in my adulthood. And now we just watched it again. And now we're going to ask Joshua Mervell, because this is your first time seeing it.
Yeah.
Holy moly. And this movie's older than you.
Yeah, about 11
84.
years
So,
older. And
tell us your first impression.
I don't even think I had heard of this movie until you guys had mentioned that you wanted to screen it. I was like, oh, okay, sounds interesting. And then as the weeks have gone by, you've talked about it.
Built it up.
Finally, we watch it. And we were sitting here, we watched the trailer, and it looked really fun.
And then
I watched it, and I was like, oh, I was a little disappointed. But I think in my mind, I was like hyping it up to be like this really great, fantastic movie. And it's fun. It's a great kids movie.
Oh, 100%.
But I think it kind of stops there for me. Like it's a fun, goofy kids movie, but as a movie, the story is really kind of bad. The premise is great.
You don't have the nostalgia that Mike and I do.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see the flaws.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see the flaws.
Okay. Let's talk about the first act of the movie. Okay, let's break it into acts. We don't do this usually. I think, first of all, the cinematography is really good. Like 10 out of 10.
Surprisingly good.
Yes. And like, as you're watching the movie, you're like, okay, this is that 80s feels, Spielberg. It's almost like Joe Dante Gremlins. It's got that vibe. Everything looks great. The music's good. The acting's good. The classic scene of, all the cool people want to go to this thing, but he's got to stay home and do his chores, which is just like Luke Skywalker.
I wanted to go to Tashi Station to get some power converters.
Right. And it's also like Clark Kent in the first Superman, remember?
Yeah.
They're like, no, you can't go. You got to clean up this and you got to clean up this. And it's like classic Americana, cinema right there. And then it's like, it goes on and you introduce the video game and you introduce the brother, you introduce the wise old man, and then it goes on, and the girlfriend, and it goes on, and you're like, okay, this is this is too long because Star Wars, which by the way has the best editing of any movie ever made, the pacing in Star
Thanks,
Wars.
George Lucas.
Yeah, is what's that?
I was making a joke
about
the editing.
Yeah, okay. No, but like this movie, that's the first flaw is the pacing. It's like, okay, this is too long. Like,
Right.
cut this down to 10 minutes, not 30 minutes or whatever it was. That was my problem. And then, well, let's just stop there. What did you think of the first act?
Well, the thing is, the first act, they leave the first act, and then they go back to the first act again. You know what I mean?
Before we get to that, though, what did you think?
So long.
But what did you think of that first act?
Yeah, I think
A little bit too long.
yeah, a little bit too long, and then on top of that,
Yeah,
it
we'll
gets
talk
longer.
about.
But I think that the setup is really interesting. It's really fun. I feel like this premise is familiar to me. This idea of like secretly training somebody to be like a space pilot. Is that?
I don't know if it is.
That's not Ender's Game, right? Is that Ender's Game?
I don't think
the
no,
book.
I haven't read that.
Or okay. I think they made a movie too. But anyways,
I think it's a great premise.
Yeah,
like
it definitely
it's-
untapped potential for sure.
It's like what's that word? Like almost primal of the kid that's fantasizing about, okay, my life is boring, just like in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I'm going to be recruited and taken away to save the universe, the world, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And Star Wars did it, and this does it in even a more grounded way. Of it starts in 1984 Earth. And then goes off into space. So the premise is magical, right, Ian? What do you think?
I agree. In my impression of the first act, I see what you're saying, but I have a soft spot for this movie because of the way that it handled everything that happened on Earth. And I think that the movie did a great job of drawing sort of distinctions between the scope of what happens on Earth and the scope of what happens in space. Everything on Earth is very, very small, very, very close-knit, very tiny. And we're reminded of that in some scenes, like the scene where he's playing the video game and the entire trailer park comes to surround him.
That's one of the best scenes.
And there's a lot of hustle and there's a lot of bustle. And as everyone's celebrating, we pan way back and there's an extra wide shot it's nothing. It's just this you see the trailer park and you see this little tiny group of them. They're all celebrating.
That.
So Nick Castle, the director, I think I did a great job of drawing these distinctions between. Now I understand that it's a space movie, and some of it's got to happen in space. I think more than half of this movie took place on Earth.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
More than half of this movie took place in the trailer park. But I don't mind that so much. There were a lot of problems with pacing. There's a lot of problems with the order in which things happened, and they didn't handle going back and forth nearly as well as they could have. But
yeah,
I think that the movie, because it spends so much time on Earth, it sets it aside. It sets it apart from contemporary films of the genre.
So here, by the way, we should point out Nick Castle, who before this is most famous for playing Mike Myers in Halloween. Did you know that?
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that crazy?
That's insane.
I know. He's a contemporary of John. He's a buddy of John Carpenter's.
Yeah.
He just happened to go into directing.
Huh.
Isn't that crazy?
That is.
So anyway, then we get the cool, then Alex, the hero of the movie, who's wins at this record-breaking score of this video game, gets recruited by this guy in a super high-tech car that recruits him. Doesn't tell him what the mission is, but he basically gets him to go into his car. And he gets into the car and he sees this mysterious guy in the back seat, doesn't know what's going on. He's like, okay, you're recruited, let's go. This car is driving 300 miles per hour. It drives and drives and drives, goes out into space. And then basically we find out that there's this galaxy-wide conflict going on between basically the good guys and the bad guys. They're about to get invaded. And they want Alex to become a pilot because he's so good at this video game. We find out that this old man has actually planted this video game on Earth as a way to recruit whoever's the best at it to be a new pilot. But in a Joseph Campbellian plot twist, he refuses the call. No, I don't want to be a pilot. I don't want any part of this. Okay, well, then we're going to drive you back to Earth. And this is the first problem of the plot. To me, the refusal of the call is a good plot beat, but to actually go through with it and spend so much time on it is tedious. To fly all the way way back to Earth, right? That's
yeah,
the first problem.
He should have refused on Earth, I think, is the big thing. And I agree with you with the fact that I like the stuff that's happening on Earth. I like the characters. I like the way it's shot. And then up until that point, though, when he leaves, when we go back, I'm like, do we have to go back? Like,
it's tedious.
And like, the story wants us to go to space, and we all want to kind of have fun in space. And I don't mind if you're gonna take your time getting there, but once you're there, it feels ridiculous coming back. I feel like,
yep, I
like
agree.
it's just such a weird beat to return back and have this B plot with the android. And
I know. Well, okay, imagine Star Wars. If Star Wars went up to the point where they went to the Death Star, and then he's like, no, I don't want to do this. And I went back to Tatooine. I'm going to go back to farming, hang out with Dax or whatever. No, Dax, what's his name? Dank? Dank? What's his name?
I think it's Dax.
Dax.
Yeah,
It is Dax.
Dax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. Who cares? And that's the biggest problem, I think, of the movie.
Dank.
And, yeah. And then the movie starts to falter. And then it introduces the beta.
Biggs.
Biggs.
Where's Dax from?
There is a Dax in there
know.
somewhere. He might be another character.
Oh, Dax is Star Trek. Deep Space Nine.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay. But anyway, in this movie, they introduced the double. And that's another... It's like, why? Like, okay, what is the purpose? And someone in the audience pointed out, oh, well, it's comic relief. Okay, fine, but they could have done the same thing. Okay, if we wanted to cut back to Earth and show what's going on, just show the fact that Alex is missing.
Right.
No one's doing the repairs. No one's doing the whatever. Instead, you introduce a double that doesn't know what's going on, and he has to grow. And then he has this encounter with the girlfriend off screen.
Yeah.
And then she slaps him. It's like, again, it's just tedious, right?
And like the whole comic relief thing, it's like the little brother is comic relief.
Yeah.
We have Centauri is comic relief.
Right.
The Turtle Man is comic relief. Like all of these like background aliens are just there for comic relief in bits. Like he steps on the tentacle, and then the other guy pops his head up.
Right.
It's all goofy. So to force this kind of like B plot in there, it doesn't make much sense. I don't like it.
No.
Dissenting opinion.
Okay.
Dissenting opinion. I like the beta B plot. And I don't... Okay, yeah, I don't think that he should have gone and then come back. Or there has to have been a better way to do that. Now, he doesn't come back to Earth for very long. It just feels like he comes back to Earth very long, the way that everything is sort of arranged.
Sure.
But he comes back down, he meets Beta, and then he fucks off to find Centauri. Mm-hmm. And then...
Oh, because he has his little beeper, right?
Yeah, he's got the beeper. But he goes home immediately. That's the first thing that he does. He gets slapped by Maggie. He goes home. He has the interaction that's one of the best scenes in the movie, I think, with the split screen.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah.
And especially when they both tell Lewis that they're going to tell him about the Playboys. Like they repeat the exact same line. Very well done, I think. But we're talking about maybe 4 or 5 minutes a movie. He goes to find Centauri. Centauri comes, and then he leaves again. But we don't really see what happens with him because we are back on Earth. We're just not following him. Now, I was amused by the Beta subplot. I think that was a lot more interesting than watching a trailer park full of people just wondering why their stuff's not getting fixed anymore.
Okay, I guess you could say that if this was the draft of a movie, you could say, okay, good idea, but why don't we have him meet the old man and get recruited, and then Beta is over here, and maybe he's on Earth getting trained, or it's almost like you delay the introduction of the big conflict so that you don't want to go back because you're still here. So it's like, okay, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then that subplot ends, and then okay, now we're gonna go and find out what this big conflict is, and then we don't have to come back. So maybe you could put all that Beta stuff in like its own little subplot section or something.
I think one of the big problems is not so much the Beta subplot or where things happen on Earth. It's where and when that big scene with the ambassador, who gives us all the exposition and sets up the stakes of the big battle. that needs to come later in the movie.
Yes.
We can't have that at the beginning and then have a random meteor attack that blows everything up, and then we just fuck around on Earth for a half an hour, and then we go back. There has to be more of a straight through line that takes us here.
Right.
But since we get this big piece of information so close to the beginning, we're wondering what to do with it for 45 minutes.
That's the key, I think, right? What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, I also think too, the whole base blowing up, I don't care. I don't know,
Yes,
like
the way
none of the
with the plastic explosives kind of thing.
yeah. There's the C4 that doesn't make any sense. Why there's this like unforeseen mole that they don't ever talk about. Like it's just some guy that plants it and then it explodes. But
it's a guy that we've met already too. Like we've met this character. He's the guy that gives Alex his clothes at the beginning of the movie.
Oh,
It is? I didn't realize
is that?
Or
Yeah,
it's somebody that looks an awful lot like him.
Yeah.
Right. There's that sort of man-woman team that
Oh,
like one of them's giving him clothes and
I
the
didn't
woman's giving
realize- okay.
Oh,
giving
okay.
Centauri money, and I think it's the man who does the sneaky C4 thing. But we've met this person, so why, since we've met them, why have we not been given some backstory?
Well,
even just like a shot after he leaves, he like looks around the corner or like does
Sure.
something to like make us kind of think like, what's his deal? And then when we cut back to him later on,
He's got to be a
it's-
little sus.
Yeah.
the thing is okay, because Josh, you mentioned earlier that this is a good kids movie, and as I was watching it, I kind of got that feeling when he first goes into the ship, and he's kind of getting processed by like the guy sitting down, almost like doing the paperwork. You remember that?
Yeah.
He's like, oh well, blah blah blah. I don't know what he's saying to him, but I'm like, okay, this is a kids movie. Just the way that the old man is like, no, he's, and then he starts speaking like an alien language, and I'm just like, okay, this is for the kids. And that's the moment where I realized it's not going to be quite what I remembered it to be. It's more of a kids movie, which is fine, but it's a little bit of a downgrade of what I wanted it to be. You know what I mean? And then like, you know, when he sits down and he does that thing when he steps on the alien's foot, again, it feels like the bar in Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
It's like a version of the bar in Star Wars.
Oh, speaking of bar in Star Wars, I mean, when they go back to Earth and there's that bounty hunter
Yeah.
after him, and Centauri comes back and shoots him, I guess, in the arm, and his arm falls off like
I know.
Ponda Baba in the
I know.
cantina, and then he even goes, "Ugh, these bad guys sure do stink," and it just was like. It was like Obi-Wan saying like you'll never find a more wretched hive
Yep.
of scum and villain. Like it's like
I know.
like so like I get it. Like
This movie knows that Star Wars exists.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
like even the way that the hand is on the ground,
Yeah.
the pool of blood. I'm like, this is like shot for shot. Like yeah, it's
Well, see, okay. Now getting back to the awkward pacing is now you have that bad guy, the bounty hunters thing. Again, that's like that should have been the middle section. It should have been okay, normal kid, then introduce the wise old man to recruit him like Obi-Wan Kenobi, then have a little bit of danger. Oh, who's this guy that's trying to kill me? It's an alien. And now the audience is getting used to one thing at a time. And the scale is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Then you kill that bounty hunter. Then you go up into space, right? But instead, they kind of did it backwards. They introduced this big scale and then come back down and back again and then back down. And that's what I think didn't work.
yeah. You introduced that bounty hunter as a reason for him to finally believe the nonsense that Centauri is telling him, right? Like
Yeah.
and then you can even have like moments where he's training the beta robot to
Or something.
be himself, right? Like
Even if you keep the beta robot. But yeah, I get your point.
Yeah,
like
like-
just something. And the thing is, we don't want to remake Star Wars: A New
Right.
Hope, but
And this is one of the reasons why I enjoy the beta subplot and why I enjoy so much of taking place on Earth, because it is not
Right.
Star Wars.
right,
and to be clear,
Okay.
I think that those scenes are fun.
yeah, they work on their own.
Yeah.
it's just the where they are in the movie.
Yeah,
right.
and I think that's why I dislike them in this movie, because it feels just unnecessary at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they are fun. I do agree. It kind of has like a Back to the Future feel to it too, in that sense where he's kind of human, but he's also kind of like out of his element and that fish out of water.
Yeah.
Kind of feel.
The fish out of water is key. Key.
It's super fun.
And they should have played it up more, but
honestly, they could have done the whole movie about like just him. Like have Alex go off and we don't see any of that. Just the whole thing take place on Earth of like it's about the stand-in is kind of a fun idea.
I'm talking about the opposite. I'm talking about Alex, the fish out of water, of him being in space and just learning. Because it's almost like Flash Gordon. You have a human introduced into this crazy world and just learning how everything works and teaching them how to disco dance and all the other important things, right? No, but in this movie, it's like they introduce the conflict, they introduce the bad guy, they introduce the barrier, whatever it's called.
The frontier.
Yeah, the frontier,
You know what, too? I think that maybe something else that could have been changed that would have fixed that Beta subplot is if that Beta was not the main character of that subplot. If we give that storyline to the girlfriend,
sure,
and have her trying to make everybody believe that it's really him.
Yeah, that could have worked.
You know what I mean? And then we give her something to do. Because also at the end of the movie, she does eventually end up leave and go back out to space to live with him. But like, what is she going to do there? What is she going to do there? Like I'm the leader of this new armada of spaceships, and this is my girlfriend. Like she's just always going to be the girlfriend.
She carries the picnic basket.
Yeah, because that's how she was written, right? And like giving her character something else to do would be really fun. Like have her like be good with computers or something, and like there needs to be some sort of communication back for like something.
What's
like
the password? England.
Like she could be like fixing Beta or something, right?
I
like
know.
Anything.
Well, that's what I mean.
Just,
it's like it's not fully fleshed out.
Yeah.
It's not fully fleshed out. Now, here's the thing. We got to talk. Okay, we might as well talk about the characters of this movie because that'll lead us to talk about the plot a little bit. First, let's talk about the lead actor, which is
Lance Guest.
Is that his name? Okay. I thought he was really good. Ian, what do you think? I think he was perfect for this role.
Oh, I think he was perfect in this role too. He approaches Mark Hamill, I think, in terms of, and he may even dunk on him a little bit in terms of he's the most likable guy maybe ever that I've ever seen in a movie. And he's just he's polite, but you can believe that he's this kid that, you know, everybody just sort of teases him for, you know, being the trailer park kid.
Sure.
And no, he did a great job, and he did a great job playing off himself too when he was when it was Alex and Beta in the same scenes. Like, just really well done.
I think it's perfect.
Yeah, because even at times, Luke, I'm kind of like, he's a little whiny.
I know.
Times, you know what I mean? Like, Uncle Owen, come on. You know, he's just got this kind of like,
it's a whole extra year.
Yeah.
I know. Yes.
Where we're like, I don't find that at all with this guy. Like,
no,
him kind of like being like, oh shucks, like I buy it. Him with the letter,
and like the bit where he balls up the letter and whips it at the sign. It's like, oh, you're pissed off about this, but you're acting in a way that I can relate to.
Yeah,
not
yeah. When he's upset and he's like in his feels, it's believable. So yeah, I think he's great. I also think that he sells it when he is doing the fish out of water alien stuff. And then when he's Beta, because he is playing like a different character in this movie, and I think does it pretty well. Like he's a pretty good balance of being Alex and the robot, like, you know,
I agree.
Trying to be like a robot, trying to be this character that he's also playing. It's fun. The scene of him taking off of his head
was great.
And placing it on the table
was great.
It's so good.
So well done.
I like it's a great bit of like character acting, and that combined with the special effects and the editing really sold it. But like when he's like turning his head, or when he like puts his hands on his eyes, but he does it to like
that was the best.
His head that's on it.
Everyone
it's so
loved
great.
That.
Like it's it works totally.
I totally agree.
Yeah, he's a great actor.
Okay, let's talk about the girlfriend who is
Catherine Stewart.
Oh, Catherine Stewart. I thought she
Sure.
was perfect.
Maggie. Yeah,
And you know what I mean? Like she was.
she played girlfriend.
Yeah.
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 Like,
I mean,
yeah.
Josh, you made a great point that she needed stuff to do, but
Yeah.
I mean, a hero-centric sci-fi family movie from the 80s doesn't really
Yeah.
have that depth of
Right.
of cast, right? So this is
Yeah.
what you expect, and she did fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I think she did a good job. Again, I'm looking for something more for her to do, but
There was a really good. I think one of my favorite scenes between them was when they were laying on like the sleeping bag, and he was listening in to the other couple across the way
yeah.
and imitating everything. So that was a pretty funny scene.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
well done. Again, if that was done earlier, right? But
yeah,
that's a whole other
you know,
thing.
even their like the melodrama of her slapping him when like that even works.
Yeah, yeah,
Like she
it
does a
all
really
works.
great job of like playing those moments out because they could be like corny and hammed up, but
Yep.
I think especially for this movie, it like felt right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we're gonna talk about the old man that recruits him.
Robert Preston.
Okay, I personally thought he was overacting a little bit. Ian, you agree?
Big time.
Yeah,
He was
okay.
doing this music man sort of shystery salesman kind of
Yes.
thing that didn't fit. It didn't fit the vibe of anything else in the movie.
I agree.
If there was one character that I would remove entirely or replace entirely, it would be this character here.
So he is the Music Man, hey?
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
What do you mean he's a music man?
The actor? I thought so. But he is Professor
Are you?
Harold Hill in The Music Man.
Which I haven't seen.
So he is essentially playing
He's
that
playing
character.
himself. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's. I still wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I still wouldn't have done it, but I'm going to tip my hat to that sort of a meta casting.
Yeah.
Did you like him?
He was fun.
Uh-huh.
His character is a little bit half baked for me. Like I wish that he was a little bit more fleshed out, and we kind of got
There was nothing to
more
him
of his-
other
yeah.
than just being like, whoa, razzle dazzle, right? Like, yeah, just in cliches, right?
yeah. He's made all these arcade machines, and like he's also an alien, I guess,
See,
and is like.
Yeah, like
He
that.
He
that
takes
was-
his face
that
off
was a cool
sometimes,
effect,
puts his face back
but he
on.
puts it back on.
But why?
Okay,
do they do it?
Spoiler alert, then he dies. And it could have had the effect of an Obi-Wan Kenobi death.
Yeah.
But instead he just does the thing, and then the other guy puts his eyes down. And then at the end of the movie, I'm
We have a
alive.
great surprise for
right?
ya.
And then even when I watched it, like when I was 20, I was like, why? How did that improve the movie? Like, was any kid...
Ugh.
Was it like, again, we've seen kids movies where people die. Optimus Prime died. The horse died in Never Ending Story.
We're getting choked up just thinking
Yeah,
about it.
that's right. But it's like, why do they have to do that? It's because the producers were like, it's a kids movie, you have to bring him back. But really, we didn't need that, right?
Surprise, Rodimus Prime.
Yeah, exactly.
still
Yeah,
alive.
exactly. Oh my god. And we saw me and Ian were laughing at your reaction when he came back. I was like, what the hell?
I could not believe it.
Yeah,
it was
shit.
awful.
Right.
And
Unnecessary.
okay, so another thing too is there's another character that kind of becomes his sidekick.
Oh yeah, that's the next actor we'll talk about, which is what's his name?
Dan O'Hurley. O'Hurley as Greg.
I mean, he was fine, but with him there, why do we need this other guy?
Yeah, that's
one
my
character.
thing. Exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Like, I want to care about Greg so bad when he's like training him how to use the ship and everything, but I'm like, you're trading off like one mentor for another halfway through the movie when they should have been one character.
Yeah.
It really does not make
Right.
any sense
It
at
just
all.
needed, and we talk about this on the show a lot. It needed one more draft where they went in and combined characters, reshuffled scenes, rearranged stuff, cut things out. Right? What do you think? Ian?
I agree. Either write Greg as a serious character who is like, we're down to business here. Our lives are in danger and you have to learn how to fly this spaceship. Or combine the two and maybe make it so that Grig, the navigator, he lost his Starfighter and he needs to find someone else. And he's the one that made the video game, and he's the one that sent it out, right?
Well, you raise a good point. Either make them opposites and at odds with each other, or make them so different that the audience can go, oh, there's the good cop, there's the bad cop, or the nice one and the bad one. But instead, they're just kind of the same.
There's an
character,
awful lot of overlap,
right?
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is you raised an interesting point about, oh, we're going to find out that he's the one that designed the video games or whatever. Once the movie gets going, and it is awesome, there's no twists. There's no surprises. So it's like all the surprises happen in the first half hour. Once you introduce all of the universe, galaxy spanning stuff, there's nothing else after that.
Yeah.
Right? It's just now we just move these pieces around on the board and that's it. We know what's going to happen.
Barely though. Like it doesn't even feel like we're moving pieces around. It feels like, all right, there it is, and we grab all the pieces and we're just shoving them into the air. Like there's no like maneuver. It's so like, and then everything was great at the end. Like it's just so.
And what's more, the stuff that happens at the end, we're pretty much told about them at the beginning because the final battle is the video game.
Yeah.
Right.
He's trained on this, and we see him beat the video game 30 minutes into the movie, and then it's note for note the exact same thing at the end.
Okay, you raised an interesting point. What it would have been cool is if something happens where he does everything he was supposed to do, but maybe he doesn't win. And he's like, oh no, now everything we predicted at the beginning of the movie didn't happen the way we thought it would. Now we have to think of a new plan.
And now he needs to use some of his fixin' shit at the trailer park.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's my skill. That's my secret weapon, whatever. Yeah. You're right.
The power's out. Oh shit, it's a good thing that I just fixed Elvira's power so she could watch her soaps.
Yes.
No, Grig
there
does
you go.
that. Like for
right.
no reason. He's like, we don't have any power, but
yeah,
we do now. Again.
See, there you go.
Every solution.
It needs another draft, right? It needs another draft. Mm-hmm. It's like if they were to remake this film, hopefully they could fix all that stuff, right?
I think a big problem for V2. So Alex is kind of hyped up to be the last Starfighter, the best person, the highest score in the training, and then everybody else dies. They have one ship left, and he goes, why don't we just hide until the bad guy shows up?
Hide and seek. Well, that was...
It's like, what, nobody else thought about this?
I know.
He brings nothing special. Nothing is special about him that we see in this movie. Like,
that's a good point. Yeah.
Everything special about him is on Earth. It's when he's playing the arcade. It's when he's like deciding not to go out and party and to like help his family. Like once he goes up into space, he's unremarkable. Like
although I'm going to give them 1 point for at least setting that up in advance, right? He's having a conversation with Grig about where they live. Or Greg lives in caves because he thinks that this asteroid is kind of like home. And then, we used to play hide and seek in these caves. At least he got there, right? At least it wasn't just, why don't we just hide?
Show that at the beginning of the movie, like him and his little brother playing hide and seek.
It's only 1 point that I'm giving him. It's
only
1 point.
Not 2. Okay.
I don't know. They could have...
They had a conversation about it, is all that I'm really saying.
They could have put a sack of flour in the cockpit and it would have ended up the same. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the character of Alex, but again, the story doesn't...
writing.
Yeah, the writing doesn't give him like something special to do at the end. Like, nothing is special about him to win the day.
Let's talk about one more thing about this movie that's really important. That's the special effects. Because this was the glory days of special effects. And the significance of this film, I don't know if it says it on Wikipedia, but it's one of the first films to use CGI, right? So even though the
Really?
Yeah, the aliens are...
Didn't Tron come out like 2 years before this?
Well, I said one of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Tron was a lot of practical effects too.
Oh, yeah.
It was,
Oh, yeah.
They looked like CG, but a lot of this was
it's true.
in camera.
So, yeah, in this movie, like, obviously the aliens are puppets or whatever you want to call that, makeup and, like...
Prosthetics.
Yeah, prosthetics. All of the rooms are real and all that stuff. But the actual ships when they're flying in space, most of it was CGI, I believe.
I think all of it.
Yeah, and it's funny because our buddy TJ thought it was added in later, but he didn't realize, no, that's how it looked in 1984. It just, and it's pretty good, right? Like,
yeah, at times it's pretty darn good, and then at times it's not
pretty
good.
darn bad.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, though. Put it this way. Considering it was 1984, I think they used it just sparingly enough that it didn't call attention to itself.
I don't think so.
Oh,
I
okay.
I think that they could have used miniatures for the most part, when things are pretty still, and then when you need to do action and have these 3D things, I think you switch to it because it wasn't always good. I don't know. A lot of the shots didn't even feel like they were lit. Like there's no lighting in like the 3D software. It
wasn't even software. It was like ropes and pulleys.
Right. Yeah, essentially. Like, well, I think too at the time, they oftentimes couldn't even see exactly what it was going to look like until it was done. Like,
well, essentially, these were rendered one frame at a time, and each frame would take a day.
Wow.
Oh,
and I'm with Josh on this. Some of it was really good. It's certainly groundbreaking, but there were aspects of the CG that were far better for some things than for others. The ships looked fine. The landscapes looked like
terrible
Nintendo 64,
sure,
except maybe a little bit worse. So why not combine the two, right? Like have some landscapes that you're shooting with a motion camera, and then superimpose your CG over top of that.
Yeah, I think particularly what sticks out to me is the base. It's this really kind of crummy 3D modeled base.
The base is terrible.
It's so bad, and we really only see it from the one angle. Like it's not this super complex thing. So why not just make it a matte painting?
Yeah, I agree.
Even when the asteroids are flying at it and it explodes, like it's still, and then the asteroid hits it, and then it's just a 3D or not a 3D, like a actual like explosion that they superimposed over top of it.
Yeah.
And then when the explosion is done, part of the base is missing, and it's also not even like modeled to be broken. They just took half of it away, and it looks like it's just
there's no scarring on the asteroid behind or whatever. It's just like it was never there.
It's like now that we're kind of getting into the nitty gritty, even like I thought the aliens were cool in a way, but they weren't fully fleshed out. There was no characters there. All of the aliens, like they looked cool, but they didn't have any personality. They didn't give them anything to do. Like the main bad guy was okay, but he wasn't great. So I guess in a way, it's almost like, because we talk about cult movies on this podcast, and this movie's almost like in between, because I think it was a fairly big hit. It's almost like in between being a cult movie, but also a hit. Like, can you see the box office on there? Like, was it a hit?
Yeah, looks like it.
So yeah,
28. Well,
it was a fair. Like, I mean, I remember it from when I was a kid.
28 million with a $15 million budget.
It's almost like, is it a kids movie that did stuff really well, or was it? Was it a blockbuster that did some things bad? It's kind of in between, right? What do you think?
Yeah, no, it
like, where does it sit in the pantheon of 80s sci-fi? It's fairly high up. What do you think?
I think it's great. A lot of that is through the lens of nostalgia.
Yeah.
But I think it's great. This movie for me is like a warm bowl of chicken noodle soup.
Sure.
Right? It makes me feel all nice and warm inside. But I can also see through the lens of my more pragmatic thinking now, imagine what this movie would have been had it landed on Spielberg's desk instead.
Sure.
And imagine if instead of this CG experiment, ILM was doing models.
Sure, of course.
And imagine they had a second draft.
Yeah.
All of those things. This could have been one of the biggest movies, right?
Yeah.
I agree.
This could have been a cinematic universe that we're talking about today.
Yeah, because I think we all agree the concept is really good. The
Yeah,
concept
it's
is
fun.
great. It's just that the execution is where it falters, right? The pacing.
Yeah, it almost feels as though this movie was too much for the people that were working on it to really know what to do with.
Could be. Yeah, that could be it. You're right.
And they did some things really well. And they created something that a lot of people really enjoy. But there's a lot of not wasted potential, but just unrealized potential.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing is I went through a phase in my 20s, like I said, where I went Star Wars crazy. And this was one of the movies I watched. And I think all of those movies, like George Lucas made a comment. He's like, oh, yeah, a bunch of movies came out imitating Star Wars and they were all terrible. Well, they all had huge flaws, but they also all had potential. But it's true. None of them did what Star Wars could do, but all of them had something to them, like a magic to them. And it's like even the one I cannot remember the freaking name of that I keep talking about the freaking castle, the one with Liam Neeson. Anyway,
Let me see if I can find that while you're talking.
it's like it's so cool and it's got such good ideas, but I couldn't even finish watching it. You know, just go Liam Neeson 80s sci-fi. Anyway, so there's so many of those. Like, remember Enemy Mine, Ian? Remember that one?
I've never seen that, but I'm familiar with it.
It's in the vein of this.
Okay.
It was with Lugos.
Krull.
Krull, that's
Krull.
it. Krull. You ever see Krull?
I've heard of it.
It's the same vibe. It's like all these post-Star Wars movies that came out, mixing sci-fi and fantasy. There you go, Liam Neeson and Patrick Stewart. So anyway, I guess the point is that George Lucas is a genius. He's untouchable. He's perfect. No one will ever be better than him. Other than that, I don't know. Ian, what else do you have to say about this movie?
Not an awful lot. It's you're either gonna love it or you're not. Nostalgia is definitely working for it, but I don't know. There's a lot of potential there, and I have no trouble seeing past its flaws.
All right, Josh.
I don't love it, but I am fascinated by it. I think that there's some really great stuff here, and I enjoyed my time watching it. I don't think I'm gonna revisit this anytime soon.
You're not gonna run home and watch it again right now.
No, probably not. But it is fun, and I think that kids will like it. And I'm not surprised that kids in the '80s loved it.
And where do you rank it among the pantheon of 80s sci-fi?
I don't know. It's hard to say. Like compared to Krull.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, it's pretty low, I guess. But no. It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty solid. It's definitely no Star Wars. It doesn't come close to any Star Trek or
no.
But it's
up
fun
there, though.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's right below Starman. Remember John Carpenter's Starman? You ever see that?
I don't think I have.
It's got a similar vibe.
Interesting.
Maybe we'll slide it in on Laser Brains in the near future, right?
Possibly.
Speaking of Laser Brains, every Wednesday at Meteor, we watch a different movie. Sometimes they're sci-fi, sometimes they're fantasy, sometimes they're superheroes, sometimes they suck. But it doesn't matter because you still have to come every single week, right? And hang out.
Oh yeah.
Watch the movie, and then afterwards we review it usually, or we review something different. We have popcorn, we have alcohol. What else do we have here?
We have us, our scintillating personalities.
Yes. And sometimes
lightsabers.
Don't worry about that. It's Polycarb. We're good.
Josh is going to tell you where you can find all our episodes.
Yeah, you can find all of our stuff over on our website at thecomicbooksyndicate.com. You can also find the video format versions on our YouTube channel, so check us out there.
Thank you, Ian, for having us every week.
Anytime. Thanks for not making fun of my movie selection.
Oh,
Yeah,
never.
no, it was
It was a good
fun.
one. And until the next time, see you later.